Welcome back to the Vision Hunters podcast. I'm your host, Cody Story, and this is another solo episode, and this show is going to be on the topic of goal setting and some of the issues that I have with goal setting. Now, I'm going to also add, before I go deep into this topic with you today, that I'm in beautiful Heber City. I have a red barn behind me. We are staying at a sheep ranch, and there's a noisy highway across the way. So I'm going to hopefully not have to compete too hard against the cars that are driving by and the big semis that are driving by. However, the landscape is unbelievable. It is gorgeous. I have the mountains in front of me. I could see them way more clearly earlier today. However, it looks like we got a storm coming in, and can no longer see those mountains. So we might get a little bit of snow. We shall see. And I would say I haven't ever spent a lot of time with sheep before. And it's interesting. One of the characteristics that I've noticed being around them is they are very scared. They are very fearful. And anytime I come around, their ears perk up. They look at me really, really strongly, and they don't know whether to stay put or to run, fight or flight. And then after they kind of understand that I'm not really a threat, they still just run off. So it's an interesting observation here, spending some time with some sheep. So I would just say they're a very fear-based animal, understandably so. They don't really have much to protect themselves other than their hooves and maybe trying to kick. And that's not really going to help against a mountain lion or a bear or coyotes or wolves. So, yep, that's the life of a sheep, I guess. They are beautiful animals. But let's get into this whole idea of goal setting and this conversation that I had that sparked this off with Callie Keene, a good friend of mine and expert in the field of product development, and also a consultant for those who want to develop products or build profitable businesses around products. And I would say why this conversation came about is because he was sharing with me where he starts with a lot of his clients, which is to start with setting goals. And the question that he asks them is to ask themselves, what kind of lives do they want to live? So you could ask yourself right now, because that's exactly what I did when I was having this conversation with Callie. Is he said, what kind of life do you want to have? That's what he asks. And of course, when you have a question thrown your way, your mind is going to try to figure out an answer. And then he also mentioned that leads into you also figuring out who you need to become in order to live the kind of life that you want to live. So I thought about it when we were talking about it in that moment, but then I was racking my brain since then, trying to figure out what goal setting means to me, what my experience has been with it in the past, and where I'm at with it today, because I'm in a new place, in a new time, moving in a new direction with my life, and also in the world of business and in the world of creating content like I'm actually trying to do right now on this podcast. So anyway, I sat with those questions and I recalled another aspect of that conversation, which was he said that once you have your goals, then you need to reverse engineer those goals, which to me means chunking things down. That way I can take incremental steps to achieve my goal. And I looked at my past and it showed me that that's exactly what I've been doing for myself and others in the physical realm. Is I would take movements and chunk them down to make them simple, and then we would work from one simple movement into the next simple movement, and the next thing you know, you're able to do very complex movements. And that's how I view goal setting now. However, I realized that I had a process to help my clients when it came to movement or joint mobility or strength and conditioning, or even with nutrition, as far as them setting their goals and achieving those goals. And I also did the very same thing for myself because, of course, I was always the guinea pig. Now, here I am. I have new goals and new skill sets that I want to embody And I'm having to reconsider the idea that maybe I don't really have a process in place for doing the kinds of things that I'm wanting to do and for achieving the kinds of goals that I want to achieve, because they are way less physical, and that means way less tangible and more in the idea or the realm of theory. Okay, so I just like, man, I don't really know how I'm going to go about reverse engineering my goals. But before we get to that, I did have to sit down and start trying to get more clarity around what my goals are today. And I ran through that exercise. I asked myself what kind of life I want to have, who do I need to become in order to have it. And I found out asking that question was actually very broad. It was very big. It was very philosophical, and that means it's very complex. So what did I do? I tried to find a more simple question to ask myself, and I actually found two good questions in one of the books that has been one of my solutions to solving this dilemma of getting clear on my goals and how to achieve them, which is the book called Tiny Habits by BJ Fogg. And he has two questions to ask, which the first one is asking myself, what do I want? And then the second one is, what result do I want to achieve? I wrote my goals down, and it was a little too big and a little bit too complex. And I'm not saying don't have big goals. I still wrote my big goals down. I still have them. However, I wanted to make it a little more simple. So I asked myself those simple questions from the Tiny Habits book, and they were sitting in my notebook for a couple of weeks, and I realized I wasn't really doing a lot with them. They were more like just a mental exercise, because I wasn't really in a place where I understood the exact actions that I needed to be taking in order to achieve them. So here I am again. I'm realizing yes, I have goals. Yes, I wrote them down. They're just sitting in my notebook, but they're not really serving me. And if I look at, again, my track record with setting goals in the more physical realm, I would write my goals down, and I would actually figure out exactly what steps I need to take. And I would also be able to track and measure them. Because I had written them down and I wrote the steps down, it became trackable. So now that's where I'm at. And I did a little exercise that I came up with, and it was to explore some of the things that I've been told about goal setting that I've done. And I just wanted to look at them and see if there was any patterns within them or any issues with them. And I actually found that there were some. So I took a whiteboard and I wrote down certain things I've done. And here is a short list that I have on my laptop here that I'd like to share with you. So obviously, make a list of your goals. Write your goals on note cards and read your goals every night before bed. Write out your goals and put them in a God box. Pray about them, meditate on them, visualize them, make a vision board, go on a vision retreat, write your affirmations down, say them out loud in the mirror every morning, which you could also say, write down your goals and say them out loud in the mirror every morning. Same idea there. Make a list of 5 things that you feel you need to do every day to get to your goals, and just do it. And I've done all of those and more, but not to go through too exhaustive of a list. I'm going to keep it at that. So I'd also ask you this question: have you done any of those things? And I'm not saying that those things don't work. I'm not saying that they aren't helpful. I'm saying that I found patterns within them that could be a potential problem or could be an issue. So, yes, I've made a vision board. Yes, I've gone on a vision retreat. Yes, I tried for months to write down 5 things and make sure that I was going to do those 5 things every day. I've read those note cards before bed with my goals on them every night. I made a God box. I put my goals in them. I prayed on my goals. I've meditated on them. I've visualized them with even Joe Dispenza meditations. I've done a lot around the world of goal setting and changing, or manifesting, or getting what I want out of life, or achieving, or being successful, you name it. So anyway, I made that list, I put it on the whiteboard, and I found that they are all very broad and abstract. So if they're abstract, they're not concrete. If they're abstract, they're just an idea, they're just a theory. The second pattern I noticed, or issue, is that they are all missing a simple and practical process. The third thing I found is that they can all potentially set you up for failure. And how I came to that conclusion was, if my goals are really big and they're very abstract and they're just ideas and theories, well, then I probably would have to be banking on my willpower or my motivation. And there lies one of the booby traps in goal setting, or the strategies that I listed out. Because if I'm banking on my willpower, I know in my past and even today, my willingness to do something can go up and it can go down, just like motivation. Motivation can go up and motivation can go down, which means it's very fickle. And if it's fickle, it means it's wishy-washy. If it's wishy-washy, it means it's unreliable. So I can't just bank on willpower or motivation. And what that has led me to, when that was my approach, was to just bank on willpower and motivation, is it set me up to put myself in a position to where I could get stuck in blaming myself and negative self-talk feedback loops and feeling like a failure. And then the more I feel like a failure, the worse I feel. The worse I feel, the more I do fail. It's just a circular way of thinking that's leading downward. Okay, so it's a downward spiral of thought and emotion and behavior, and that does not serve me. Now, awareness and letting go are two things that have helped me deal with that. However, I also know if I was able to have a process, a step-by-step process to achieve my goals, I would be less likely to fall into that booby trap. Now, the other thing that I picked up in BJ Fogg's book was he was talking about wiring in positive behaviors. And if we're talking about goal setting, we're talking about change, we're talking about becoming a new person. And to wire in new positive behaviors, the research shows that we're actually more capable of doing that, or it's easier to do when we feel good or when we feel successful, because of the chemicals that are released in our minds and in our bodies. So basically, the better I feel and the more successful I am, the better I'm going to be able to do. And the better I do, the more likely I will achieve my abstract goals. So that's just a cool little side note. It's a cool little takeaway that I learned in reviewing goal setting. And I wanted to share some of these insights with you because my hope is that it could potentially help you if you have goals that you are aiming towards in your life. Now, some definitions that I wanted to explore, because my vocabulary is not very big and I didn't really study English that much because I really didn't go to school that much, because I was all about athletics and sports. So I didn't have to go to school as much as a lot of other people, and then I eventually dropped out, which means I'm not that academic. So it's important for me to understand basic words and get down to the nitty-gritty on these definitions. So 4 important definitions to consider when setting goals or wanting to achieve goals. The first one is aspiration. The definition of aspiration is a goal or objective that is strongly desired. So aspirations deal with goals and objectives that are strongly desired. So it deals with our desires more. The difference between an aspiration and an outcome is this. An outcome is a final product or end result. So I don't see anything there as far as desire. It's speaking more to a final product or an end result. Another definition for outcome is a conclusion reached through a process, and that's why I wanted to add this one in here, through a process of logical thinking. Now, I like outcomes because they're less flexible. BJ Fogg likes aspirations because they're more flexible. And there are reasons as to why one could be better versus the other, but that's up to you. You can arrive at whatever conclusion you want. I do like outcomes because they feel a little more concrete. All right, the next word I wanted to look up was process, because for me, that's one of the missing links when it comes to goal setting. So process is a systematic series of actions directed to some end, which is great because this deals with me solving the issue of not really understanding how to reverse engineer some of the goals or aspirations or outcomes I'm aiming for. So it's really cool because it also deals with systems, a systematic series of actions directed in some end. So for me, that's exactly what reverse engineering is all about. It's starting with an end in mind, reverse engineering it backwards so I know where to start, and then chunking it down so I can make incremental progress over time. And that's the process. Now let's just add in one added bonus word to define, and that's system. And a system is a set of things working together as parts of a mechanism or an interconnecting network. It's a set of things working together. Now, if we look at process again, it's a systematic series of actions. So a set of actions working together directed in an end aim, a goal or a target. Okay, so you can dig deeper into those, but I just wanted to really get a basic understanding of some of the words that I'm exploring so they have more meaning and so there's more clarity for me. And now I'm going to probably get more clarity on those words as I continue to pursue them at great length. Okay, so now that we have gone through 4 important definitions concerning goal setting, I would like to share in closing 4 reasons why this exploration into goal setting has been so helpful for me lately. And the first is, it's reminded me why it's so important to define and gain clarity around my goals. It's also showed me again the importance as to why I need to reverse engineer my goals and set a process in place that sets me up for success rather than failure, to where I'm not just banking on my willpower or banking on something fickle like motivation, to where I can actually bank on actions that are concrete and have a concrete step-by-step path to walk down to achieving my goals or hitting the bullseye. It's also reminded me why just setting goals and writing them down is just a starting point. It is helpful, but it is not enough to get me to the goals. And also, it's reminded me how important having an aim in life is. And having an aim in life for me brings me more purpose. And the more purpose I have in life, the more fulfilled I feel. And again, that deals with feeling good about myself and feeling good in my life, which then allows me to obviously be able to help and be of better service to others, because I cannot give what I do not have. And if I'm walking aimlessly around this planet feeling miserable or resentful or angry or comparing my life to everybody else's life and seeing how much I'm lacking and how much everybody else has and how far behind I am and how I'm too late, I'm too far behind, it's never going to happen for me, you name it, it's reminded me that I need to continue to focus on taking care of myself, and then I actually do have something to give, because I'm actually aiming at goals that are calling me to become greater than I am today. And it's also showed me that change is a skill. And if change is a skill, it means that I can improve upon the skill. And if I improve upon the skill, that means I can get better at achieving my goals. And who doesn't want that? Who doesn't want to be better at achieving their goals? The last thing I'm going to share with you is a simple action that you could take. If you're driving, I'm not saying this is a good time to do that, but if you have the time, or if you need to make the time, do so. Make the time to sit down quietly by yourself with a blank sheet of paper and a pen, and no distractions. So turn all your notifications off on your phone, put it on airplane mode, make sure the computer is shut down, just you, a piece of paper and a pen somewhere quiet, and set that timer. And I want you to do a brain dump exercise and just write down your aspirations or the outcomes that you want to aim for. what do you want and what result do you want to achieve, right? So just brain dump on that. If you want to get philosophical, you can go the way me and Callie Keen were discussing, which is to ask yourself, what kind of life do you want to live? And then the question you can connect to that is, if you would like to explore it, you could just ask yourself, well, who do you need to become in order to have that type of life? Once you set the timer, do your brain dump, and here's the kicker. Once the timer goes off, you have an opportunity to celebrate. So I want you to celebrate you completing that 20-minute task of writing your aspirations and outcomes down on a piece of paper. And I want you to celebrate however you want to celebrate. And the reason is that is going to release feel-good chemicals in your brain, and that is going to help you wire in or begin the process of becoming skillful at wiring in positive behaviors or becoming skillful at changing. Okay? So I just want to remind you that that is the easiest way for us to wire in change. Okay? So we celebrate all the small wins along the way versus just having these big lofty goals way off in the distance that take a really long time to achieve, feeling failure after failure after failure, because yes, there will be failures along the way. I'm not saying there never will. I'm just saying this is a way to start building a process to where you can continue to have more successes along the way and feel better. And that connects to something that a friend of mine, Mike Young, shared with me. He said, Cody, this is all about falling in love with the process. And this is how I am learning to fall in love with the process.